All rise. We will obey. The International Criminal Court is now in session. L'audience à la Cour pénale internationale est ouverte. Please be seated. Veuillez vous asseoir.
Thank you very much. Court officer, please call the case.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. The situation in the Republic of Congo, or Kenya rather, in the matter of the prosecutor versus William Samuel Ruto and Joshua Arap Sang, ICC 0109-0111. We are in open session.
Thank you. Appearances?
Morning, Mr. President. Good morning, Your Honours. For the prosecution this morning, Anton Steinberg, and with me, Lucio Garcia, Lorenzo Pugliatti, Pierre Belbenoit, and Grace Go. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. President, Your Honours. On behalf of the victims, James Mavira, Charlotte Divina, and myself, Oshin Nancy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. President and Your Honours. For Mr. Sangis, Mary Ange, Cynthia Pondi, Logan Hambrick, Dr. Caroline Busman, Philemon Koej. My name is Kato Kigan. Mr. Sang is present. Thank you, Your Honours.
Thank you very much.
Mr. President, Your Honours, good morning. Mr. William Ruto, who is present in court, is represented by Mr. David Hooper of Queen's Counsel, Dato Shamala Alagendra, Ms. Lee Laurie, also of Counsel, Clara Gerard Rodriguez, our case manager, and myself, Kareem Khan.
Mr. Canavas, is that it?
That's correct, Your Honor.
We note your presence. We'll get back to you in due course. We go to private session.
All rise. We will obey. Please be seated. Veuillez vous asseoir.
Thank you very much. We are in open session. Just quick announcement. Our sitting schedule for today. Normally we would have risen at 11, but we decided to proceed from now till 12:30. We will rise at 12:30. We'll take our lunch break at that time and return at 2 and continue from 2 to 4. So that will be the sitting schedule for today. Prosecutor, have we done the Rule 66(3)?
Your Honours, I have not yet confirmed it for the record, but I will now confirm that the warning was given to the witness by myself personally under Rule 66(3).
Thank you very much. Can the solemn declaration be administered to the witness?
I solemnly declare that I shall speak the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you very much. Witness, can you hear me?
The witness, yes, I can hear you clearly.
I thank you very much and welcome you to the court. We'll give you the same words of welcome that I've given to every other witness who has testified before you. First, I would like you to know that this courtroom belongs to you. And the reason I tell you that this court belongs to you is because we do not want you to feel like a stranger in it. We want you to help us do our work of searching for the truth about what happened in the Kenya post-election violence of 2007-2008. Do you understand?
The witness, yes, I do follow you.
Yes, please do feel at home and answer the questions the lawyers will ask you. That's how we do the work. It's through questioning. And the first lawyer who will begin asking you those questions is the lawyer representing the prosecutor. He will ask you questions first. And when he finishes asking you questions, then the lawyers for Mr. Ruto and Mr. Sang will take their turns asking you their own questions. And it may well be that we may also give an opportunity for the lawyer representing the victims to ask you questions. Do you understand?
Witness, yes, I do understand you.
We want you to listen carefully to the questions that each lawyer would ask you. One lawyer at a time would ask you questions, one question at a time. We want you to listen carefully to each of those questions, one at a time, as the question is being asked of you. Do you understand?
The witness, yes, I have understood.
You listen to the question carefully, you understand it. If you understand it, then you can answer it. If you do not understand the question, please indicate so. Indicate that you do not understand the question so that the person asking you the question may repeat the question in a way you will understand it. Do you understand?
Witness, yes, I do.
So once you've understood the question, then answer it to the point. Just answer, give the answer that the question calls for. Just answer it briefly and fully and stop there and wait for the next question. Do you understand?
Witness, I do understand.
In answering these questions, I want you to please not worry about whether or not the question that has been asked of you is a proper question or a fair question. Do not worry about that. What I want you to worry about is simply the answer that that question calls for, and then answer it. The matter of whether or not the question is correct, whether it is fair or proper, is not for you to worry about. It is for me and my colleagues, the judges, who will worry about that. And the way we worry about it is to make sure that lawyers who ask witnesses who come to this court questions, do not ask them questions that are not fair or correct or proper. We take that job very seriously. Do you understand?
The witness, yes, I do understand.
We also do not want you to argue with the lawyers because you do not like their questions or because you think the question may be abusive. Again, it is our job as the judges to make sure that lawyers do not abuse witnesses through the means of asking them questions. Questions in this courtroom are not abusive. We don't allow that. Do you understand?
The witness, I do understand you.
So try not to argue with a lawyer or try not to think, I do not like this question, you shouldn't have asked it. Just listen to the question carefully, understand it, and answer it. Again, I have to ask you, do you understand all of this thing I'm saying?
The witness, I have followed what you have said and I have understood you.
Thank you. You must answer those questions truthfully, to the best of your ability. That is the only way you can help us do our work, by being truthful. We also do not want you to guess, to engage in guesswork, or to speculate. Only tell us what you know. Do you understand?
Witness, I do understand you.
Also, try to avoid telling us what somebody else told you as if you are the one who witnessed what you're telling us. In other words, there may be a situation where a witness was not there to see what had occurred. Maybe somebody else told that witness what had occurred, but when the witness is answering the question, they answer it as if they were the ones who saw what happened. When in fact what happened was that the witness heard it from somebody else. We try to avoid that. Do you understand?
The witness, I have not quite grasped what you said.
What I'm saying is, do not give us information you heard from somebody else. Tell us only what you know, not what you heard from somebody else. Do you understand?
Answer, yes, I do understand.
Now, I need to return to my advice to you to make sure you understand the question and answer it briefly and stop. Answer just what the question calls for. The reason I need to return to that is because the court has ordered that you testify under certain protective measures. those measures include the fact that your name is not being used directly. No one will call you by your name. You will only be referred to by the number pseudonym. Your face is not also being directly broadcast to the public. Some computer technology has been used to make sure people do not see your face clearly and know who is testifying. The same with your voice. Your voice is not being broadcast directly. Again, there are some distortions that are applied to your voice so that people who know you will not readily make out that it is your voice that is speaking. And from time to time, we will need to go into private session to hear some testimony, because that sort of testimony may contain information that someone who hears it will or may know that that's you. So these are all what we've done to make sure that we protect your identity. Now, how you answer the questions would also help maintain those protections. It is important that you do not give more information than the question calls for when we're in the public session. This is important because the lawyers who are asking you questions know what information they expect you to give, and when they ask you the questions, they will not expect you to give them more information than that. So they feel safe asking you that particular question in the public session. Now, the problem becomes in your answer if you start giving much more information than the question calls for. There may be a risk that in giving that extra information, you may reveal identifying information. So it is for that reason that it is important that you just limit yourself to what the question calls for. Somebody asks you, what is 1 plus 1? Simply say, if you know the mathematics, people will say 2, then they say 2, and leave it at that. Do not go, 1 plus 1 is 2, because when I went to school, I learned that in school and all that stuff, and they told me 1 plus 1 is 2. And no, just simply 2, and leave it at that. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Witness, I have understood you.
Thank you. Just listen carefully, understand the question, answer just that question, and stop. Now, there is some logistical matter that I also must speak to you about that makes it possible for us to do this work well. There are some colleagues who can only hear you through the microphone. Those are the court reporters and the interpreters. They hear you only through the microphone. For that reason, it is important that we make it easy for them to do that work. And the way we do that is to make sure that no two people are talking at the same time, because if two people are talking at the same time, the court reporters and interpreters will not hear anyone, because everyone is talking through the same microphone, so to speak. we cancel each other out. So it is important that when the question is being asked, you wait for the question to finish. And once the question finishes, we also want you to wait a little while, something like 5 seconds, before you start answering. So, prosecutor asks you a question, 1 + 1, and then you have to wait for about 5 seconds before you say 2. The 5 seconds, you know that by counting 1 to 5 in your mind. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you start answering. Do you understand?
The witness, I have understood you.
The reason you have to wait, you may be asking, well, if you finished asking the question, why do you have to wait for 5 seconds? You can answer immediately. No, it's not that simple. The reason why you have to wait 5 seconds is because while you are answering the question, or while the question is being asked, rather, while the question is being asked, somebody is interpreting that question in the background. And they need some time to finish interpreting. After the question has finished, they may still need some time to finish all their interpretation. That's why we allow for 5 seconds, because we think that within those extra 5 seconds, the interpreter should be able to finish the work of interpreting. So that's why we want to wait for 5 seconds after the question has finished before you start answering. Do you understand?
The witness, I have understood.
And finally, I would urge you to speak at a speed that is not too fast and not too slow. So do not speak too fast, because again, when you speak too fast, the interpreters may not be able to follow what you're saying. Also, do not speak too slowly, because we want to finish this job quickly and let you go. Do you understand?
Yes, I do understand you.
Thank you very much on that note. And those questions will begin now with Mr. Steinberg for the prosecutor. Mr. Steinberg, we're in open session.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request we go into private session to deal with some background information relating to this witness. I imagine it will be approximately 10 minutes.
Private session.
Nous sommes en audience publique.
We are in open session, Mr. President.
Thank you, Your Honours. Mr. Witness, I'd like to start off by asking you some questions about your knowledge of the accused in this case, starting with Mr. William Ruto. Did you know Mr. William Ruto in 2007?
Yeah. Answer yes.
What can you tell the court, Mr. Witness, about Mr. Ruto's position in Kalenjin society and in the Rift Valley?
Nitaelewa pale. I did not quite follow what you said.
Urudie, sija kushika vizuri.
Could you please repeat what you said? I did not quite grasp it.
Certainly. What can you tell us about Mr. Ruto's position in Kalenjin, in the Kalenjin community? How is he regarded amongst the Kalenjin in the Rift Valley?
Alikuwa wakati ule mpaka saa hizi kwa sababu hakuja kuweko.
Answer. At that time and until today, because there have not been any further elections in order to select any Kalenjin leaders,
Witness, can you continue? What we heard in your answer seems to be an introduction saying at that time and until today, because there had not been any further elections to select a Kalenjin leader. Can you tell us more? The question was, how was Mr. Ruto regarded within the Kalenjin community?
Asante. Kwa jamii ya Kalenjin
The witness, thank you. Within the Kalenjin community, he was a leader. And if you would like to talk about his political status, he was the MP for Eldoret North.
Thank you. Let's start off with the fact that you say he was a leader in the Kalenjin community. How did he become a leader in the Kalenjin community?
Campaign iliendelezwa kwa radio ya KAS FM.
Answer. A campaign was led over KAS FM radio.
And who on KAS FM radio was leading this campaign?
Joshua Arap Sang.
Answer. Joshua Arap Sang.
And can you tell the court the name of the radio show which Mr. Sang hosted?
Ilikuwa inaitwa Lenemet.
The program was called Lenemet.
And how did Mr. Sang campaign to have Mr. Ruto become a leader of the Kalenjin?
Kwanza Ruto alipata nafasi ya kwenda KAS FM kutoa.
Answer. Mr. Ruto had the opportunity to make a speech over KAS FM, and Mr. Sang put questions to him. In answering the questions put to him by Mr. Sang, he said that he was a true leader.
Who said that?
Joshua Arap Sang.
Answer: Joshua Arap Sang said so.
If I understand you correctly, then Joshua Arap Sang referred to Mr. Ruto as a true leader. Do I understand you correctly?
Sio hivyo. Nimesema Ruto alikuwa akienda kwa.
Answer: No, this is what I said. Mr. Ruto was invited to appear on CAS FM, and he presented his political program. On that occasion, Mr. Sang put questions to him, and he also provided the listeners the opportunity with putting questions to Mr. Ruto. I do not quite know how the program itself was organized, but generally speaking, questions were put to the listeners, such as, what is your name? But on many an occasion, it was difficult to ascertain the identity of the listeners who were putting questions over the telephone. So, it did come to light that these were people who had been prepped to take part in this meeting in order to follow this campaign through.
All right, I'll come back to clarify some of those issues. But what I'm trying to understand is that earlier, I referred to page 29, line 4. Line 2 to 4, you said the following. Mr. Ruto had the opportunity to make a speech over CAS FM, and Mr. Sang put questions to him. In answering the questions put to him by Mr. Sang, he said that he was a true leader. What I'm trying to clarify is that who said who was a true leader?
Bwana Joshua Sang.
Answer: It was Mr. Joshua Arap Sang. Subsequently, there were listeners who called in to the program. I don't know whether it was they who called in or whether they were called up themselves over the telephone.
All right, Mr. Witness, I'm going to ask you please just to try and focus on the exact question I'm asking you. You're giving additional information which is not necessarily part of the question. So let me just let's try and focus on answering the question, and then you can give additional information. Do you understand that? So you've answered half of my question when I asked you who said who was a true leader. You said Mr. Joshua Sang said that. Who was he talking about?
Alikuwa akimaanisha Ruto.
Answer: He was referring to Mr. Ruto.
Thank you very much.
Hata kidogo, hata hiyo sio kumaanisha kwa sababu walikuwa naye hapo kwa studio. Sasa ni kwamba alikuwa tu akiambia Ruto kwa mnajili ya watu.
It was not just simply because Mr. Ruto had been invited to the studio, but also with regard to the main community, it was said that Mr. Ruto was a true leader.
Thank you. A few follow-up questions. You said and I refer to line 18 and onwards of page 29, it did come to light that these were people, the callers, these were people who had been prepped to take part in this meeting in order to follow this campaign through. How did that come to light?
Answer: I have not quite grasped your question, Counsel.
I'll repeat, and I'm paraphrasing. Well, I'm repeating to you the answer that has been translated. You said Mr. Ruto was invited to appear on KAS FM, and that Mr. Sang put questions to him. Recall that? You can just...
The witness: no, that is not what I said. I do not know whether he had been invited or whether he'd gone there of his own volition, but all that I do know is that Mr. Ruto was at the KAS FM studio. I do not know how his invitation was organized. I notably do not know whether he had been invited or had gone there of his own accord.
Very well, but what I'm really interested in is what follows. You said Mr. Sang put questions to him and provided listeners the opportunity to put questions to him. Remember saying that?
Answer: yes, questions were indeed being put to him.
And then, further down, lines 18 and onwards, you said it came to light that these people, these listeners, had been prepped to take part in this meeting in order to follow this campaign through.
Yes.
So my question is, how did it come to light that these callers had been prepped or prepared to take part in this meeting to follow the campaign through? How did you find out about that?
Manake ni kwamba hata kuna wakati mimi mwenyewe nilipiga simu.
Answer: at a given moment in time, I called in myself, and Mr. Joshua Sang asked me what my name was. Now, with regard to the other listeners who took part, Mr. Sang would talk to them without even asking them what their name was. So I wondered how it was that he knew their names.
Is there anything else that you can tell the court that made you think these listeners, specifically the callers to the program where Mr. Ruto was described as a true leader, anything else that leads you to believe that they had been prepped beforehand?
Ndio. Hawa watu wenye walikuwa wakitajwa majina na Sang kabla hajaje.
Answer: yes. The people whose names were given by Mr. Sang were part of a group. A group that were supporters of CAS FM. I don't know quite how to describe them. I can't remember the name of that group. One of them was called Sanders. Mr. Sang might, for example, say to somebody from Sunrise, the Sunrise Group, to greet the other members of the Sunrise Group. There is another group, and I can't recall the name of that group, and I don't know whether it's still in existence, but I do believe that it was dissolved. I do not know whether I have really answered your question.
Let me ask you another one. Can you recall the names or pseudonyms of any of these callers who used to call into Mr. Sang's show on this occasion when Mr. Ruto was on the show?
Mr. President, may I raise an objection? The witness had not said any of them was using pseudonyms. And to the extent of my learned friend suggesting that use of pseudonyms was involved, he is leading, and I would like to object.
I'll rephrase, Your Honour. Can you recall the names that by which the persons calling into this show identified themselves, if at all?
Nakumbuka majina mawili, mengine nimesahau.
Answer. I remember 2 names. As for the others, I have forgotten them. One was called Tija, another was a councillor.
Can you please spell the first name for us, Tija?
J I
Answer. J I P T I N B I N W Y O. G I P T I N B I N W Y O.
Jiptin Bin... I don't think I can pronounce that. Yeah. Jiptin Binwo. Can you pronounce that for us, please?
Kiptidinyo.
Answer Jiptindinwo.
All right.
Can you say it again, witness? Can you say the name again? Just say it. Just say it. Let's see if we can spell it in court. Can you?
J I P
I P T I N B I N Y O. Kiptin Bin Yo.
All right, there should be a K at the beginning. I heard the witness say K-I.
Okay, witness, can you do this for me? Don't look at your paper. Just look at me on the screen and tell me the name. Just say the name.
Inyo.
Witness Kiptin Binwio.
I think there's also some lapses on the relay. All right, so we will. Did you say Captain Dino?
Yes.
Your permission, Mr. President. Mr. President, we concede that a person by the name Kiptindinya used to call, and we are prepared to have the spelling also made out so that we move on from this point.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Kinkatwa. Can you assist with that spelling again?
Mr. President, the spelling is Kiptindinyo.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Witness. And did you say that person was a teacher?
Answer. No, I'm not sure what he did.
All right, I must have misheard. The word Kiptindinyo, what does that mean in Nandi?
Look at Nandi. Look at Kipsigis.
Answer. It is not the Nandi language, but Kipsigis. And the meaning of this name is a woman rapist. That is an individual who hides in a field of maize or in a copse of bushes and waits for women to go by in order to rape them. So it's a nickname given to that kind of individual.
Thank you. And the second name you said you remembered, I think you said this person was a counsellor.
Counsellor.
Answer, yes, that is correct.
Mr. Witness, please observe the pause between my questions and your answers, because sometimes we're being cut off. Was that the name the person used, counsellor?
Counsellor.
Answer, counsellor.
All right, let me move on. You said Mr. Sang described Mr. Ruto as a true leader. What was the Kalenjin word or words used by Mr. Sang to describe Mr. Ruto as a true leader?
He can't do it, never mind.
Answer, Kandinui Namabat.
Can you spell that for us, please, Mr. Witness?
Nitaon ka kwanza niandike kwa karatasi alafu tuiseme.
Answer, please give me the time to write it out on a piece of paper, then I'll spell it to you.
Double I.
spelling. W-I-I-P-S-K A-M-B-O-I-M-D-E-T space M-E-B-O another space I-M-A-N.
All right, so I'll have a go at that. Wipskam Boimdet Mebo Iman. Is that close enough?
Kushika.
Answer, I did not quite grasp what you said.
All right, never mind, it's on the record. Microphone, Your Honor.
Oh, sorry. Witness, can you pronounce the name again? The word you spelled. Can you? Don't look at the paper. Just pronounce it. See if you can pronounce it.
He can't do it. Never. Amen.
Answer, Ikam Boimdet Mebo Iman.
The spelling of the first word would be double I. The second word would be K-A-N-D-O-I-N-D-E-T. The next word is N-E-B-O. And the last word would be I-M-A-N.
I'm grateful, Your Honor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kinkatwa.
And witness, what is the literal meaning of these words?
Wewe ni kiongozi kweli.
Answer, you are a true leader.
Now, besides Mr. Sang and CAS FM, were there any other people who were supporting Mr. Ruto to become the leader of the Kalenjin?
Mara ya kwanza haikuwa wengi, lakini baadaye watu wakawa wamekuwa wengi.
Answer, at the outset there weren't many of them, but subsequently there were more and more people supporting.
What was the relationship between Mr. Ruto and the traditional Kalenjin chiefs in the Rift Valley like at that time?
Unajua hapo mpaka ijulikane.
Answer. You know that there is a difference between the elders in the Rift Valley and those in the sub-tribe of the Nandis.
All right, but what can you tell us about the relationship between any of the Kalenjin traditional leaders and Mr. Ruto at that time?
Your Honours, could I also raise another issue? Is my learned friend uses the word Kalenjin chief, and elder and chief are two different positions, Your Honour. And I'd ask my learned friend to be more specific.
Well, in fact, I'm going to be less specific and allow the witness to explain. And I'll repeat my previous question. Can you tell us what can you tell us about the relationship between Kalenjin traditional leaders and Mr. Ruto at that time, whether they be elders or chiefs or whatever position they might hold?
Your Honours, again I'm going to rise because a chief is not a traditional role. It's an appointment by the state.
Well, let's give the witness some space to explain that. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Witness. Could you answer that question?
Hapo ukisema college itakuwa ni vikubwa kidogo kwa sababu college.
Answer. Well, if you're talking about Kalenjin people, this is a generalization that includes that sub-tribe who have different customs. So what I can tell you about the Rift Valley and the traditional chiefs or the elders, most were members of Ruto's church, the AIC. And those people who go to that church don't often deal with traditional matters. They only deal with religious matters.
Well, those traditional chiefs and elders who went to that church, what was their attitude towards Mr. Ruto's, or the campaign to elect Mr. Ruto as the Kalenjin leader?
Your Honours, I'm going to object to this because we don't have a basis of how this witness would know what happens in that particular church. Because from the information we have received, he belongs to a different church.
You can cross-examine on that, Mr. Allegendra.
Thank you, Your Honours. What can you tell us about these traditional leaders' attitude towards the campaign to elect Mr. Ruto as leader of the Kalenjin?
But that is a very unfair question, Mr. President. The witness has not said anything about traditional leaders. Instead, he has said about church leaders. Actually, the church, not even the church leaders.
Objection overruled. Mr. Steinberg, put the question again.
Thank you. It's from line 7. I'll repeat that. The traditional chiefs and elders who went to that church, that is the AIC church, what was their attitude towards Mr. Ruto or the campaign to elect Mr. Ruto as the Kalenjin leader? Do you know that?
Answer. I'm not in a position to know that. However, he went to a great many meetings, and each time they heard that Ruto was going to a particular place, they would go there too.
Who would go there too?
Answer. These elders from the church. And also, they had dealings with the members of other churches. That is to say, Ruto gave a lot of money to people who belonged to to his church.
Just for the record, the AIC is the African Inland Church, is that correct?
Yoivo.
Yes, that's right.
Let me just try and wrap up this point then. You've mentioned that there was a campaign to elect or to have Mr. Ruto appointed as the Kalenjin leader. Are you able to tell us who were the main people who were supporting Mr. Ruto in this campaign, the notable people that you know of?
Ruto kuchakuliwa.
Answer. Ruto was not elected. Let me explain to you. The election was on the radio. People called into the radio station, and they were supporters of KAS FM. That's not an election. There was no an election in relation to the main community. But there wasn't any really competitors within the election.
All right. But the question is, who were Mr. Ruto's main supporters in this campaign that you've been speaking of?
Bukan namna gani?
Answer. I beg your pardon? What supporters are you talking about?
Mr. Witness, you told us about a campaign to have Mr. Ruto become the leader of the Kalenjin. I'm asking you, are you aware of the identity of any people, notable people, well-known people, who were supporting Mr. Ruto in this campaign?
Your Honour, could we have a reference from my learned friend as to where the witness said there was a campaign for Mr. Ruto to be elected? And secondly, the witness is speaking about supporters of KAS FM, not supporters of Mr. Ruto.
We move on. If that's an objection, overruled. Proceed, Mr. Steinberg.
Thank you, Your Honours. I'll repeat the question. Do you recall you told us earlier about a campaign to have Mr. Ruto become the leader of the Kalenjin? Remember saying that?
Your Honour, I was asking for a line reference for that issue, Your Honour.
I remember overlapping speakers.
Your Honours, I believe that objection was overruled. Now my question is, besides KAS FM, were there any other people who supported Mr. Ruto in that campaign?
Hiyo sikupata kujua.
Answer. I wasn't in a position to know about that.
All right, I'll leave that for the time being. Mr. Witness, was there any particular occasion that you can recall where Mr. Ruto became leader of the Kalenjin people?
Yeah.
Answer. Yes.
When and where was that occasion?
Sikumbuki wakati,
Answer. I don't remember the date, but that ceremony at which he was chosen as leader of the Kalenjin was at the Post Club in Eldoret.
Sorry, which club in Eldoret?
Sports Club, Eldoret.
Would that be sport?
Answer. The interpreter. Overlapping speakers, we are unable to render the meaning.
One second, everyone. Witness, did you say sports club?
Vivo.
The witness, that's right.
How do you know about this ceremony, Mr. Witness?
Niliona kwa TV.
Answer. I saw it on the television.
And what happened at that ceremony?
Answer. The most important thing is that Ruto was chosen to be the leader of the Kalenjin. I didn't understand anything else that happened.
And what does it mean to be the leader of the Kalenjin, Mr. Witness?
Hapo sielewi kwa sababu hiyo ni muungano.
Answer. I don't understand.
Muungano.
Because it was for the first time the Kalenjins were elected. But if you didn't go as a Nandi, I can tell you about this. What I can tell you is that it was politics. It was a way of getting votes.
What did you understand by his appointment as leader of the Kalenjin?
Hiyo sikuweza kuielewa vizuri.
Answer. I haven't understood because to say that one is the leader of the Kalenjin and in other places one wants to impose the Nandi traditions. Amongst the Nandi people, if a leader of something, well, if someone is a leader, no one can contradict him. But everything that happened in terms of the Kalenjin, I didn't understand much of it.
So, do I understand you correctly that in the Nandi tradition, if somebody is appointed as a leader, no one may contradict him? Is that what you try to convey?